mind like Eyes Adrift. Eyes Adrift was another Seattle supergroup that came out in the early 2000s, and it was Chris Novoselic on bass, one of the guys from Sublime, the drummer Bud Gaw, and then one dude from the Meat Puppets. And that was a supergroup. Really great record too, but to technically compared to this one, this one was just leagues above everybody else. They were ahead of their peers in a weird way, just with this the aspect of everything that they had: jazz, blues, the saxophone parts in it.
I think a lot of those were. I think a lot of those were Saunders.
Yes,
that's his influence. You know,
brought in a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know, the influence of that guy, which you don't. When you hear all the other names in the band, John Baker Saunders is kind of like
the unknown.
It's like unknown.
He's the unknown soldier.
But again, his bass carried it too.
Yeah, the bass is it starts with the bass, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah, the opening is a bass line,
and it's just that smooth, slow. And like you said, you used it for your alarm clock for a long time, didn't you? Yeah,
really?
That was something that you woke up with. Yep. And it's, but his vocals aren't overstated in that as well.
No, but I before we digress too much, I just want to jump to the saxophone stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
I agree.
yeah.
When it got to that, I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. It does catch you for a loop a little bit.
I was
I
wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, you're thinking, wow, where did this kind of come from? And they brought in another vocalist too, and this vocalist, Mark Lanigan, is another voice that is very distinctive of the 90s too, but yet he's continued that same kind of timbre almost in his voice, not the scream kind of, but the lower register of it.
Right.
In Queens of the Stone Age, in his own records, Screaming Trees. Come on.
Yeah.
There was just so many things that Mark Lanigan did, and he's the voice. I would almost say that now, instead of Layne Staley, that you would bring into anything. Right. And say, oh yeah, I got Mark Lanigan on my record. That would be awesome.
So I have a question. Were those tracks with him singing on the original album release?
There's one.
Yeah, it's actually my favorite song on there. It's him and Layne singing together.
Oh, which track was that?
That is 8, Long Gone Day.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like that one a lot too. Yeah,
because they trade off on the lead vocals on that
I
song.
guess I didn't notice that, but maybe I'd have to listen to it again.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that same kind of almost
listening to the drums on that one, I think.
Yeah, it kind of gives you the feeling too of like the Alice in Chains trade off in the vocals. Since they had 2 lead vocalists in the group, right. And Lanigan coming in and doing like killer work on this, man. Just coming in and laying down some tracks for it, which is really awesome.
But to your point,
why don't you explain? Those other tracks were on the deluxe edition or something.
So what happens is, kind of jump forward. There's a record, and we'll talk about all of that in a moment. But they had basically written a second album, an unfinished second album, and Layne Staley said no, his health was really bad. And this is 1999, so 3 years before he passed, which, by the way, we're recording this after Layne Staley Day. Now they actually have this as his day in Washington.
Yeah.
Or at least in Seattle.
What's the date?
August 22nd.
That's the same day that Kurt Cobain killed himself, too?
Is it?
I think he was found 2 weeks after he actually died, which he was supposedly died on the same day.
I thought Kurt it was Cobain in April.
I thought Kurt Cobain died in April. Yeah,
that's
what I was
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure because I came to Colorado Springs and I was like, woke up in a hotel and that's the first thing I saw when I woke up, and I was like,
"That's a hell of a day." Yeah. Everybody remembers all that stuff, and especially I don't really exactly remember, but I remember when Layne Staley passed.
Yeah,
that was like, damn, this is another one. So many people in the '90s passed away, lead singers and Blind Melon, Sublime, Nirvana,
and a lot of heroin.
Yeah, and it was huge.
That sucks.
Yeah,
too bad. Yeah, man.
Such a talent.
Yeah,
such a talent.
Well, it's a big talent pool.
You
know what I mean, of people that particular drug is taken.
Yeah, and it seems to be lead singers almost.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like they have
crazy.
A pact.
Yeah, it's like
they have a secret lead singer room where they all get together and do heroin.
Or the government murdered them.
Oh no.
Dun dun dun.
All right, now we're on a different podcast.
Conspiracy theorist.
But let's get to the recording.
Yes.
Of
Anyways,
Above.
the second unfinished album, they sent it to Mark Lanigan and said, "Are you in it?" Mike McCready actually did this, and he sent it to Mark Lanigan and said, "Do you want to do any of this? Do you want to write some lyrics?" And he did.
Yeah, no, I mean, he wrote some lyrics to that. He helped with the music on, because he did sing on "I'm Above" and "Long Gone Day."
Yeah.
He's
I'm Above. That's the other song.
He's credited with co-writing the music to those tracks too, with McCready and Martin. Lanigan also he wrote lyrics for 3 of the extra tracks, which you're talking about:
Right.
"Locomotive," "Black Book of Fear," "Slip Away."
And actually, like the song portion of that was written by Peter Buck from REM.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of they had this deal, this
Interesting.
influence where a lot of people could come in, which there's a lot of good songs. on
And
that
to the
stuff.
listeners out there, I'm referring to on Amazon Music, you can listen to the deluxe edition of this album, and
Yeah.
it has a few of extra songs on the bottom. So I was just trying to
On the 20-year anniversary, they came out with a deluxe box set, which came with all the extra stuff, the Live at the Moore CD and the Live at the Moore DVD, which they recorded because they really did. They did a lot of shows, but not compared,
Right.
to a lot of other bands, and especially for this kind of band, they did East Coast dates and West Coast dates, things like
Right.
that. So they did kind of do a lot of stuff. Really, them being making just the one record, they did end up with a name, Mad Season, and they got it from Mushrooms.
Yeah, from the mushroom season in London or in
Yeah,
England, rather.
awesome.
It's the time of year when mushrooms are in full bloom. McCready says it related to the seasons of drinking and drug abuse.
Yep.
It was recorded in Seattle at Bad Animal Studios, which was owned by Ann and Nancy Wilson of Heart, because they did a lot of stuff with a lot of the grunge guys
Sure.
Really?
back in the day. Yeah, and they still who plays Nancy Wilson? I think Nancy Wilson does a lot of stuff with what's his name from Alice in Chains, the other guy.
Cantrell?
Yeah, Cantrell has done a couple of songs with them, things like that. I'm pretty sure it's Nancy. I'm not sure. It might be Ann too. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then
I won't. Because I don't know.
again, they did it in 7 days, and they did it in basically it was the album was released on March 14th of '95. So that would basically put it 24 years ago. At this point, next year is going to be its big 25th anniversary for it, that's a pretty big year. 94, 95 was pretty big for a lot of bands.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, man, definitely.
It did a pretty good job on the charts as far as the singles propelling it there, like River of Deceit and I Don't Know Anything. And of
River
course,
of Deceit being the big one, yeah.
that's
for
the
sure.
big
That was
one,
the
yeah.
single or whatever.
Yeah.
They got up there. 24 on the charts is actually pretty good.
I don't know. I bought that album the day it came out. I was so happy.
Yeah, I
was
know.
like a happy dude.
Yeah, that's.
Do you want to tell that story, Dan?
I was in Cuba. It was crazy. And I just happened to have the day off. I worked 11 days on, 1 day off. And I happened to be off the day they got their shipment at the Navy Exchange on Guantanamo Bay.
It was the only one that they had. Too.
Yeah, so it was like my whole summer or spring, I guess,
Wow.
and
Cool.
into summer,
I love when albums especially have like a memory attached to it like that, like at a time. Didn't you go in and ask for it and they were like, we don't...
Oh, no, that was at a record store later,
Okay.
looking for the record.
Tell that
And,
story.
Yeah, so I go in, I'm like, I just remember that I go, do you have Mad Season?
Did they grab Matchbox 20?
It was like by Matchbox 20, and I don't even remember what happened after that at this point, dude.
Because you saw red.
I went Red Ross.
Yes. It's like, no, come here. You'd almost slap him on the wrist, like, stop it.
Bad.
Stop.
Bad.
You need to go back. I remember,
There's more to that story.
I remember really, like, whenever it came out, a lot of my friends had it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ever own it back at that point, but I remember listening to it, but I didn't listen to it like I did probably about 6 years ago. It kind of came back into my life, and I I was like, oh man, I really want to. I remember it being pretty good, and I remember we were still working together, Dan, and I could just remember listening to it for weeks in a row every morning. And I said something to you, like, oh man, that was one of my favorite records of all time. And I'm like, no way, man, it's pretty fucking badass.
That's a record that's in like my rotation all the time.
You can pull it out at any time, and it still sounds excellent. It still sounds great. The production on it is excellent too. I know they used a lot of different. They didn't really use a lot of crazy techniques, of course, but I mean, I think he uses a 12-string on one of the 12-string electric. On one of the songs, Lifeless Dead, I think he plays the 12-string on one of the Jimmy Page 12 strings,
Cool.
the double neck SGs, he plays that live too.
Yeah, I saw
which he just got the right sound out of it, so he's got to play that. Staley even plays guitar, on one of the tracks.
Indeed.
They really did just kind of open it up for anybody to say, hey, let's bring this in. Xylophones, all kinds of stuff in the production.
They just did what they wanted to do, and I think it was that freedom that led to that synergy. You know what I mean? Everybody felt like, and even McCready said, I was writing songs. And he goes, I never felt like I could step forward in Pearl Jam and do that.
Okay.
Because he thought there was a lot of good songwriters there.
Yeah.
So
it's hard,
I think it was very freeing for all of them. Layne Staley said a lot of this, all of Mad Season basically says that his lyrics were inspired by a book from like the 1920s called The Prophet.
Yes.
That he carried around with him in a backpack. It's by Khalil Gibran, and I've not checked into it, but I think it was like the late 1920s that it came out, if I'm correct.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'm on that as well. But so I just like imagine being able to just go in any direction you want to go,
but having a basis like they had.
But what I was going to say is it all blends so well.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I don't think like they all came in with it completely the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Layne Staley was on his own trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mike McCready he wanted to play that blues guitar.
Yeah.
But then also add in the ultra arena rock riffs.
I know, right?
I mean, they have so many cool riffs on the whole thing.
But I think it's just a synergy of it all.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And that's and again, that's probably why it came together so fast, is because it was again meant to be. So whenever you're making music with somebody too, things happen in a way that you really you can't explain it. I mean,
yeah, you got to click. I mean, I only have limited experience or whatever playing music in my short time, but I have played with a lot of different people, and it's just like a weird unspoken.
It just happens.
It's like a dance, but you're not dancing with each other. You're listening to each other. You know what I mean? It's weird.
You feed off of each other, and then that hunger just to have fun.
It's not a fight, it's a dance, brother.
And it's just, you could tell that they had fun with it because it just flowed so easy.
Right.
I could see.
It does flow. The whole album flows very beautifully.
I could see this whole album actually being the soundtrack to a David Lynch movie, almost, in a way.
Black and white.
Yeah, it could really go, especially with a lot of the jazz background stuff and the saxophone things, I think it'd be really cool. And
flashing lights and a lady.
Yeah, and here, since I've been listening to it again, I've been thinking, man, if I ever did make a movie, somehow I would have to throw these in there. A lot of it, because I've often thought about making a movie built around the soundtrack, almost. Just making it about one record.
Okay.
And the whole record not necessarily tells a story of the movie, but the movie's completely something else.
Right.
But somehow that background music fits into the scenes that you put it in,
nice.
And you could have a lot of that background stuff, like the bass line at the very beginning. I've often thought that would make a really cool movie when the soundtrack is a record.
That would be cool.
It would just be a weird flow with things,
For sure.
And I originally thought about that with Stone Temple Pilots, using their tiny music as a background for a movie.
That would be very
the whole
interesting.
thing would be weird.
Yeah.
I've often thought about albums as concepts for an entire film or whatever. They're out there, but they're not all the best.
You could use this as a basic, because he was really kind of Layne Staley writing his own lyrics, he was really talking about himself and a lot of
for
this.
sure.
And you can hear that in a lot of the things that he said. You can when you read the lyrics, you see